let us begin with the oldest of the textual aspects, Sanyasa Upanishads by Dr. Sushumna Kannan, the resident scholar of Indica. Sushumna Kannan ji? Yes. She is going to present from United States. This is a very odd time for her, but I thank her for joining us from United States. She has worked on women issues mostly. Her early work is focused on one Vaishnavite woman rebellion, radical woman called Goda Devi, and another radical Shaivite woman called Akka Mahadevi. How actually they stand as a counterexample for the stereotyped feminist thinking coming from the Western background, and how Dharmashastra books like Stri Dharma Paddhati have a chance of getting completely misread by the Western scholarship from a Western gender perspective. She exposed and she showed how such texts have to be understood from the Vedic insider perspective rightly. After doing all those, she's nowadays concentrating on itihasas like Mahabharata. And as part of her interest in Dharmashastra texts and other such texts, her interest mostly is on such important text and textual research. She's now, for this conference, she volunteered to speak on texts called Sanyasa Upanishads. These stand as a counter to the perspective that sannyasa is a completely later idea in Vedic tradition. And Dr. Sushumna Kannan is going to present to us the perspectives that come from these textual resources. Thank you, Sushumna ji, again for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Nagaraj sir, for having me over. It's an honor to be here. So very happy to be here, everyone. So these are the Sanyasa Upanishads. To start with, I just want to go into the etymology. Sanyasa, noble undertaking. But there are a couple of other ways to understand it as well. Some as sarva samvit, that is all possessions, and giving up of those possessions is sannyasa. Now, the structure of this presentation goes like this. I want to start off by putting down some research questions that interest me, and I'll tell you soon why those questions interest me. And I want to tell you about the scope and limitations of studying the Sanyasa Upanishads, and a little bit about the various editions that we have, the commentaries and translations and so on. And then very quickly, the form and content of Sanyasa Upanishads, sannyasi referents and so on, the qualities of a sannyasi. And then I seek to answer the research questions and present you with a conclusion. So my research questions coming from my own various interests are as follows. And towards the end, I'll explain more about why these questions were important to me. But for now, I'm just stating them. What is the significance of sannyasa in the Sanyasa Upanishads? What's the relationship between the sannyasi and the world? Does he care about us or should he? Is he ethical? And what is the sannyasi's relationship with the Veda and the rituals? what should be our stance on the sannyasa grihastha polemics? Is the sannyasi an escapist? Is he suicidal? And two other concerns that I always carry with me are caste and gender. So, who has the eligibility to take up sannyasa? And is the sannyasa tradition misogynist? Nagaraj sir already spoke about this a little bit, and I'm going to be echoing him. I'm happy that I'm going to be echoing him actually. So, let's get started. So, the scope of the Sanyasa Upanishads is a little bit limited, but it does shed light on the rules and regulations that surround the sannyasins. So, we must look at these texts if you're even interested in discussing the sannyasi. And these texts are also important because they show to us where later traditions such as Tantra, Yoga, and Bhakti draw their energy from. So that's very interesting. Well, the limitation is that when we read this in isolation, we feel that it excludes female sannyasins, whereas when we include other texts like the Mahabharata or even other Upanishads, we see women more prominently as sannyasins and as Brahmavadinis in the Upanishads. The other limitation, of course, is that the dating of these texts cannot be determined exactly, and but that reality is something that we have to live with when we talk about many Hindu texts. So that's there. Now I want to talk about the various editions, the commentaries and translations. For the purposes of this presentation today, I have used Olivier's translation, but I'm not going to take up theoretical aspects as much as Nagaraj sir just did. So I'm just using his work as a translation. And he relies on the selection of about 20 Upanishads as Sanyasa Upanishads by an earlier critical edition that was brought out by Otto Schrader. He just changes the order, but pretty much I think the same 20 Upanishads are translated by him into English. So this is Otto Schrader. He headed the Adyar library in Madras and brought out Sanyasa Upanishads under the minor Upanishads. And much later, the same library, the same publication brought out Upanishad Brahma Yogin's commentary on the Sanyasa Upanishads by a certain Chintamani Dikshit. So the idea here is that these Sanyasa Upanishads are not categorized as such by our indigenous texts and traditions. But this is a classification that is a very modern one, first made by editors of mainly by the German editor Paul Dasson. And later, following his distinction, there are many such editions now, such as Shaiva Upanishads, Shakta Upanishads, Yoga, Vaishnava, Samanya Vedanta Upanishads, and so on. But the category, I think, has become kind of accepted, so we might as well go with it. The reason why Upanishad Brahma Yogin's commentaries are cut up in this kind of manner as Shaiva, Shakta, and so on is because he commented on all of them, on all 108 Upanishads. So very amenable to this kind of classification. And the same publisher brought out an English translation of Upanishad Brahma Yogin's commentary on the Sanyasa Upanishads. So we have this. And here is a recent one, Swami Atma Priyananda, not with too many, just 7 Upanishads. I haven't been able to read this, so apologies. But like I said, we run the risk of excluding women. But interestingly, this book has an entire chapter on women saints and sannyasinis of India. And in here are included many like Gagi, Maitri, Shabari, Sulabha, and so on. And like I said, if we just look at the Mahabharata, we see so many of them, Sulabha, Shandili, Amba, many of them taking up sannyasa. So my sense is that when Indian publishing houses, especially those associated with mathas, bring out such editions, Although they're sectarian, they do pay attention to the whole of Hinduism and include a larger corpus of texts. Like I said, this distinction is not indigenous to us, but has been fairly accepted. So these are roughly the 20 Upanishads I'll be using today to talk about sannyasa. Now, very quickly, the form of the Sanyasa Upanishads. As we know, Upanishads are in the dialogic form. The Sanyasa Upanishads are also the same dialogic form. And many of these conversations are between the gods and Prajapati, Narada and Vishnu, between Brihaspati, Atri, Pipilada, Yajnavalkya, Maitreya and Shiva, Narada, Vishnu, Shaunaka, Brahma and Vishnu, Sankriti and Dattatreya in the later Upanishads, and so on. Some of the conversations appear to be doubts that require clarification from a teacher, and then the teacher responds. So a question answer format. And then there are several verses interspersed in these conversations, which are kind of shared across the Upanishads. And then there are some historical characters like Devadatta, Brihadratha, and a sage called Shakayanya. That's just interesting to note. And there are several common verses and procedures across these Upanishads that are common, which gives us an understanding that these were preserved by different communities, because otherwise, then what's the need for repetition, right? So they were likely preserved by different communities and in probably different regions of India as well. And later Upanishads show an influence of the Puranic form and also sometimes display sectarian affiliation. Now, there are several terms for ascetics, which is very interesting. Paramhamsas, Kuticharas, Yogins, Avimuktas, Bahudakas, Hamsas, Brahmin, Avadhutas, Turiya Tita, Jata Rupadhara, and Parivrajaka, Bhikshu, Muni, and Keshan in earlier Upanishads. And there are numerous examples of great renouncers: Samvartaka, Aruni, Shvetaketu, Aruni, I think, sorry, Shvetaketu, Durvasa, Rubhu, Nidagha, Jadabharata, Dattatreya, Raivataka, Narada, Vrishabha, Gautama, Bharadwaja, Yajnavalkya, Vasishtha, Vamadeva, Haritaka, and so on. And now we quickly come to the content of the Sanyasa Upanishad. There is a brief discussion on the nature of Brahman in almost all the Upanishads, and a long list of prerequisites of the nature, conduct, and behavior of the sannyasi is always given. The procedure for taking up of sannyasa and the types of sannyasis that there are is also given. The sannyasi's paraphernalia is listed, and the rules for the conduct of a sannyasi and his qualities. Also given is who is a bad ascetic, and there is a cautioning against freeloaders who are masking themselves as sannyasis. There is an acknowledgement of the difficulty as well as the greatness of the sannyasi life. And these Upanishads are intertextual with the Dharma Shastras, the other Upanishads, and the later Sanyasa Upanishads have intertextuality with Yoga Vashishta and such other texts. So that's interesting as well to note. Now, the nature of Brahman is the understanding here is as a creator, but also as someone who is within us. So he is the breath who summons our organs, and he is present in the waking state as Vishnu in the dreaming state, as Rudra in the sleep state, and so on. He is ever present within all creatures. And so if we focus on the Brahman within us, then we would immediately be released from the samsaric bondage. This is mostly the discussion of how Brahman is within us and so on. The prerequisites in the process, non-violence or abhaya to all creatures is an important prerequisite. The sannyasi treats everyone the same, friend and foe. Celibacy, truthfulness, forsaking desires. He gives up the Vedas and ritual activity in heavenly words. This is interesting. I'm going to talk about this a little bit. He does not engage the senses, and he eats only to survive without caring for taste. He removes the top knot and discards the sacred thread on ground or water. These are replaced by contemplation of the self. I studied the Veerashaiva tradition for my PhD, and a number of scholars, modern scholars who are reading Basava's removal of the sacred thread, think that it is an act of rebellion that he's doing, but it's actually not. He was doing what a sannyasi was doing, which is, take out the sacred thread and put it either in water or ground, which is what all sannyasis do if they have to take up sannyasa. So there you go. And he renounces the family, but how? First, he has to seek the permission of the parents, wife, children, sometimes friends and relatives too. And then he conducts a shraddha to himself. And there are specific verses wherein he says that he himself is the Brahman, he himself is the Yajna, and so on. And then there is a parting address to his son, and if he has no son, to himself. And there are other parts of these texts, the Sanyasa Upanishads, that have longer parting addresses. I haven't gone into those details. And it says that there should be no tears from family members because tears have negative effects. And then the family circumambulates him and does not look back. Those who do not look back go to heaven. So it's kind of an antyeshti that he performs towards the end of before this. Usually he performs a yajna. I'll come to that in just a minute. So there are expiatory penances and 8 shraddhas that he performs to gods, seers, divine beings, human beings, and so on. And he offers oblations to ancestors and then divides the estates. This is very reminiscent of Yajnavalkya dividing his possessions among his between his 2 wives. And then he assigns his good deeds to his friends and his bad deeds to his foes. This is there in the Manusmriti as well. So this is almost like an Antyeshti. And then he performs the Agni Vaishvanara fire sacrifice and puts into the fire all the sacrificial ladles and wooden spoons and so on, because from now on he's not going to be performing any sacrifices. And he could honor and feed Brahmins and perform 1,000 Gayatris, chant Om, the Purusha Sukta, Viraja oblation, and so on. And then sits on the black antelope skin. After this ritual, he should go to a guru and then request for the great sayings. So that's pretty much the ritual aspect here. And then there is a very performative moment when he goes to the guru. The guru says, "Stop, stop, take a staff, a garment, and a water pot, and so on." And this is very reminiscent of the Kashi Yatra, because in the Kashi Yatra, in the marriage ceremony, because there too there is this moment where the grihastha is pretending, I mean nowadays of course pretending to take up sannyasa, but then the father-in-law to be invites him back and says, "No, here, don't do that. Let's get you married." So then shraddha for the sannyasi's parents becomes a problem, and so the problem is understood and there is a solution offered. So this is very interesting. To my mind, it felt like the tradition is active and a renegotiating of rules is possible. So in Shankara's life story as well, we see this. There was an exception made with regards to how the shraddha procedures should go on. So typically the promise in these Sanyasa Upanishads is that if you take sannyasa, 14 generations on both sides, sides of parents are given moksha immediately, automatically. In some other texts, it's 30 generations. In others, it's 60. In yet others, it's 300 generations. So, and just the act of taking up sannyasa will burn up all his sins hitherto. So this for me was an interesting aspect of the tradition. There are several rules about when to renounce after completion of duties as the last stage of life, when in mortal danger, which means when one is dying, and that kind of sannyasa is called atura sannyasa. Or whenever one feels like it, or when one is free from debts, when one is a Brahmin, or in any other ashrama and so on. So the texts are varied in their opinions on when one must take renunciation. And there are types of sannyasa as well. Vidvat sannyasa is for those who are already enlightened, and Vividishu sannyasa is for those who are seeking knowledge. Atura sannyasa, like I said, is when you're almost dying, and if you say I renounce at that stage as well, you stand to benefit in the exact same way as you would if you had taken up sannyasa much earlier. There is also taking sannyasa to fulfill a vow. If in case you have had a bout of ill health and recover from that, as a vow, you might have promised that you will take sannyasa. And then there is renunciation by reason of rights. This is slightly different from the earlier forms. So this is a renunciation occasioned by an event like when mortal danger, or renunciation not occasioned by any event. So these two distinctions. And then there's another classification based on what kind of sannyasa you are. All of these, the Kuticaka, the Bahudaka, the Paramahamsa, Hamsa, Turiya, Tita, Navahuta, they all have different conduct, different lifestyles, what they eat, and the worlds that they reach. It's all different. So these kinds of sannyasis are also classified based on the kind of lifestyle that they lead. And so this is, the kind of one of them might put a white vertical mark on his forehead, carries a triple staff. The other one might be eating like a bee. Yet another one might be wearing a loincloth. Yet another one might not wear anything, might go naked, might be smearing himself with ashes. Yet another kind of sannyasi might just be eating fruits, and so on, treating his own body like a corpse. Yet another sannyasi might be waiting for food in the manner of a python, and so on. So depending on the nature of the sannyasa that they are minding, there are types of sannyasis. So the general qualities of sannyasa, of a sannyasi, is that no night or day distinction for them. And the sannyasi is considered internally pure and not needing external purification. Sannyasis, although sane, conduct themselves like madmen. Let and then let him never long for death or for life. So life and death both are treated in the same way. And sannyasis were identifiable by their attire, and therefore others in society knew how to treat them. So the long list of today, I think we're a little bit confused. We think that only those who wear ochre robes are sannyasis, but like I read out just now, there are different ways in which to, be a sannyasi. The attire itself can be different, and this was, I think, known in earlier times, and therefore there were fewer chances for mistakes occurring. So the general qualities of the sannyasi is that he is constantly contemplating oneness with the creator and the creation. Ahimsa is important. Internalization, I'll come to what this is. Dissociation with rituals. Retention of Om meditation. So he forsakes all other mantras and rituals but retains Om. Celibacy, which is mentioned in some Sanyasa Upanishads, and then disgust of the body, association with studying and non-possession. So experiencing oneness in some of the sectarian texts, or early texts which are not sectarian, it would be Narayana, Shiva, or any of Brahma, any of these different deities, or all of them together as well. And he knows that his higher and lower selves are the same. He views his body as a temple, and that Shiva resides within him. He believes that I am pure and I am Brahman, and I am the essence that perishes not. There is no one else who is different from me. And he learns from animals to eat like birds or bees, to wait for food like pythons, and so on. A long list of animals are to be found within these Upanishads. So those who believe their bodies to be true are like beasts. So there is a dissociation with the body as well. And ahimsa is extremely important. So safety from me to all beings, from me everything proceeds. This is the declaration that he makes before he takes up sannyasa. No enmity with anyone is again emphasized in numerous Upanishads. Let him not wander in places where harm may come to other living beings because of him. Let him walk carefully and slowly so that he doesn't step on any little organisms. This is Manusmriti for you. And the same sentiment is echoed in the Sanyasa Upanishads as well. So no harm to others by thought, word, or deed. And he cannot cause harm to the smallest of creatures, even. And he regards the Brahmins, cows, dogs, deer, and all with equal eyes and without hostility. Non-possession, he receives whatever food is given. He should neither accept nor look at things such as gold. If he does, he becomes the murderer of a Brahmin. That's how hard the tradition is on a sannyasi who becomes possessive of anything at all. And this is very reminiscent of Sri Ramakrishna. Because he was tested by the Bengali Vadralok, and we have stories to attest this. So he grasps nothing at all, and if he does, the worst of sins accrues to him. This is an interesting phenomenon. So internalization is when he deposits the fires to which the grihasthas typically perform yajna outside to the fire. But here there is a depositing of the breath inside. He deposits those fires within him. And there is an interesting reference to the in the Jabala Upanishad. Brihaspati asks Yagnavalkya what is akin to the battlefield of the Kurus, and Yagnavalkya answers that it is the Avimukta, the place where Shiva resides, which is internal to the sannyasi. So this is also reminiscent of the Mahabharata war as a yajna in itself, as Rana yajna. And when questioned further by Atri, Yagnivalkya mentions Varanasi. This is the yoga connection. So it's here that Shiva resides, and so everything is within the sannyasi's body. What the grihasthas might seek outside is already within him or is located within him, and sadhana is performed right there on it. So then, how can one? So then, Atri asks Yagnavalkya, how can one be a Brahmin without the sacred thread? And this is an interesting kind of substitution that's happening here. When he sips water after eating, the sacred thread is naturally present. So basically, the sacred thread is now inside of him. It is a string that connects him to the Brahman. So this is the reason why the external sacred thread is thrown away, because he has one inside of him. Similarly, when he performs the evening sacrifice, or when he performs the or when he eats in the evening, it becomes the evening sacrifice. When he eats in the morning, that becomes the morning sacrifice, and so on. So there are various substitutions of this kind for the sannyasi, and he shall not worship external gods. This is the whole idea, and internalization is what a Brahmin does too. Often he invites the deities within himself, so there is a little bit of commonality with the grihasthas here, but no sacred thread at all for the sannyasin. And there is a strict dissociation with rituals. Like I said, no mantras, no worship, no invitation or dismissal for the sannyasi. And so the idea here is that the sun of consciousness always shines brightly within the sky of our hearts. It does not set and it does not rise. How can we perform the twilight worship? This is the underlying logic. So because Brahman resides within us, to reflect on the scriptures is middling. To ponder over mantras is the worst. So this is the whole idea behind the sannyasa rejection of rituals. Also related to. Um, so So the unmuttered is his Gayatri, and whatever rite a man performs, that sticks with him. The fruit of that sticks with him. Also, rituals can go wrong, therefore they are limiting. So this is the reason why rituals are forbidden for the sannyasi, because rituals can go wrong and those doshas can stick to him. Also, whatever results the rituals produce, those stick to him. The idea here is not to take anything, either positive or negative. And he also cannot accept food that has been offered to a deity, no prasadam for him. He's above all of this. He's above rituals. So the idea is that the idea also is that performing rituals requires material goods, and that is something that the sannyasi does not have. So how will he perform the yajnas, right? And rituals are meant for paying off debts. In this case, the sannyasi has no debts. So he finished them all, if you like, just by taking sannyasi. Therefore, so the retention of meditation on Om is explained in a number of the Sanyasa Upanishads. So pranava is of absolute importance, but there are several distinctions, and this I did not know about earlier. So human Om, Brahman Om, and internal Om, and so on. So the different types of sannyasis each practice a certain kind of Om. So that was very interesting. And so it is auspicious, it is time itself, and therefore it is the highest of all Vedas. It contains all the Upanishads. So those who silently recite the Om 12,000 times a day will soon see Brahman himself. So this is also reminiscent of Shankara's Shiva Shadakshari Stotra, where he pays obeisance to Omkara. And then there is dissociation with studying. So this is a little tricky, because some of the Upanishads say that he must not study, and yet there are others that say that he must reflect on the meaning of the Upanishads, that he does study the Vedantas. And then yogic practice is mentioned. Whereas in one of the Upanishads, it says he shall not engage in the pursuit of yogic texts or Sankhya texts or manuals of mantras and so on. So there are some differences in the way this particular topic is treated. But disgust of the body is something that is common to all the Sanyasa Upanishads. Basically, the various ways in which sannyasis typically look upon the body is with disdain, that this is a storer of feces, urine, phlegm, and so on. And drooling, which is also a common theme to the Jataka tales. This is also mentioned in the Vairagya Shataka. Similarly, storer of urine. This is the typical image that we get in the Sanyasa Upanishads. There is a very, very good understanding of what a bad ascetic is, and this is where the texts get very interesting, because they're critical. They are not simply blindly accepting the institution of sannyasa, but they're also very vigilant as to who can take it, why, what is the motivation, and so on. So he who renounces for the sake of wealth, food, clothes, and so on, he will be unable to attain release. And he who lacks patience and knowledge and detachment and so on is the bane of ascetic life. So he who has no concern for his duties will not attain detachment, for he is a vile ascetic. So he who resolves to renounce and then does not is a lapsed man. And so on. So there are 6 fetters of an ascetic, which is losing his begging bowl, hoarding, gathering of disciples, sleeping during the day, idle talk, and so on. And then there is a reference to a pseudo Brahmin, who is actually a sannyasi, because Brahmin is another word for a sannyasi, who has merely a mass of hair for a top knot, and so on. So this is another fellow that the texts condemn. Mm. And those who are Brahmins only in appearance are also condemned. Again, this is a reference to the sannyasis. So those who are careless and whose minds are set on outward things, who are backbiting and quarrelsome, these are also, condemned by the Vedas. So in other places, they are meant to go to great hills and so on. So the paraphernalia of a sannyasi, very quickly, he has a danda, minimal clothing, begging bowl, shaving. He has rules on shaving, and he has a water strainer. So this is a bamboo staff, and he says to it, "Protect me, friend. You are my strength and friend. You are the bolt of Indra," and so on. The Paramahamsa, however, has no staff and other paraphernalia. Again, this was interesting because we today seem to club all the sannyasis into one kind of look and one way of life, but that's really not true. So he could wear an ochre garment, a ragged one, a loincloth, a patchy one, a bark garment. An aged sannyasi was allowed to, take on more clothes to protect himself. He was allowed to wear footwear, but the Paramahamsa again has no clothing. So different kinds of garments for the different kinds of sannyasis. Um, and then there were 5 types of alms food. Those were that were very little, eating like a bee or a bird. Those offered in advance, those unsolicited, those that were asked and gotten simultaneously, and those that were offered. What kind of begging bowl was also associated with a lifestyle? Some of them were pani patrin, using only hands as begging bowl, no begging bowl at all, really. Others were udara patrin, who would eat a very small amount or eat like a cow. They were supposed to beg in villages nearby, and a sannyasi was not supposed to offer alms, obviously, because he is the receiver. He had to eat food as a medicine only to sustain life, and had to carry a water strainer so that he didn't kill living beings in water when he fetched water. And he had to go to homes in the villages in the late afternoon after everyone had eaten. And never could he eat ghee, no question of eating meat at all. So this was generally his role. Um, and um, sorry. Yeah, so he had to shave his head hair and keep his facial hair, and several rules associated with this. I don't want to go into this in detail. Oh, there was a specific reason why the hair thing was happening. I'm going to skip that for now because I'm worried that we'll run out of time. Okay, so he was homeless except in the rainy season, and he could only visit one day. He could only stay 1 day at a village and 5 days in a town. Otherwise, he stayed in deserted houses in temples and so on. He had to practice celibacy. There were 6 kinds of sexual acts, a very strict definition. To even look or touch, to even think of the sexual act, to offer praise to a woman, to talk in secret, to even intend, all of these were considered as sexual acts for him. But celibacy is mentioned in many Upanishads, but not explicitly in some minor Upanishads. And modern sannyasis could take advantage of this unless they belong to a matha. It is not clear. So this is something that we must remember. After all, we know that a great many sannyasis or rishis have also engaged in sexual act. So this is something that we must keep in mind. There is also a prohibition of the sannyasi to live in a monastery. So this was again interesting because today many of them would attach themselves to monasteries, although many don't as well. So other do's and don'ts: he cannot enjoy praise, no afflictions to pleasure or pain, controlling the senses, absence of anger, always a reclusive and must respond as Narayana when spoken to. A good ascetic should never disclose his name, and he should never visit houses of ill repute. And he must behave like this: Bala, Ummata, and Pishacha. He must invite insults. And this was again very interesting because Tantra perfects this. It draws from the Sanyasa Upanishads this technique of inviting insults because it thinks that we burn karma when others insult us. So the sannyasi also, keeps himself pretty vague. He behaves like a fool or a lunatic, and he presents himself as a madman, even though he is wise. And This is also reminiscent of Sri Ramakrishna. Yeah, so let him act in this way so that people won't associate with him. This was the idea. So the Sanyasa Upanishads are also sources for later conceptual developments such as Advaita, Advaita, and Vishishtadvaita. And this is very interesting. So notions of Jivan Mukta, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, And the Tenkalai Vadakalai distinctions in the Sri Vaishnavas, which think of the nature of God and devotee as cat type or monkey type, and the notion of Kevala or Kaivalya, the Anatma, all of these notions are mentioned in the Sanyasa Upanishads. Now I quickly come to my research questions and make an attempt to answer them. So, what is the significance of sannyasa and the Sanyasa Upanishads? Seeing him thus with a serene mind, even the gods are filled with envy. So, this is how significant the sannyasi is, and I'm drawing from within the Upanishads because this is what evidence for me is to draw from them. So, these texts are saying that the gods are filled with envy when they see the sannyasi. This is also said about the Brahmin in some other texts, but definitely the sannyasi. So in one of the Upanishads, Turiyatita Avadhuta Upanishad, Narayana says that the sannyasi alone or the Avadhuta alone is a great man whose mind abides in me alone, and I too abandon him in him alone. So this is Narayana's favorite, and Avadhuta is Narayana's favorite. And knowing that so he alone is superior to all. He is the teacher of the world. He and I are the same. Again, this is Brahman speaking. Um, so um, so uh, so then the sun swerves from its place, thinking this man will cleave my orb and reach the highest Brahman. So this is what Surya is thinking apparently. Now, quite interestingly, some of the scholars that we have today have kind of recognized that in the Varnashrama system, it is not really the Brahmin who is at the top, but actually the sannyasi. And Veena Das, in her book analyzing the Dharmaranya Purana, talks about this. And I thought that this was pretty accurate because even if the Brahmin is revered, he is revered only because he is behaving like a renunciant. So, what is truly being revered here is the renunciatory aspect of a Brahmin. So, imagine how much the sannyasi himself must be revered, right? So, Histaman is one of the few, Jan Histaman, one of the few scholars who understands that Brahmins were revered not because, they had some ritual power or because they were ranked high or because they were pure or anything like that, but because of their renunciatory qualities. And the same kind of extends to sannyasis way more. So if you want to think about this carefully, sannyasis were the aspirational figures that the rest of Indian society was wanting to become like. Maybe not immediately, but one day. Maybe not right now, but when I die, and maybe not right now, but in as my final ashrama towards the end of my life. This is the kind of aspiration that one sees. And there are some other scholars like T.N. Madan who want to say that renunciation was not all that important and so on. But really, we do see a handful of scholars understanding. That the sannyasi is the real hero here, and so on. So the sannyasi life is a life of not seeking power. It's a life of looking inwards, of contemplation, of giving up power voluntarily. And I think this is not adequately theorized. This is also what Nagaraj sir was telling us earlier. Now, Patrick Olivier, in his introduction, talks about urbanization, about disease, and so on as reasons why society organized itself as it did into the Varnashrama Dharma scheme. But this just does not suffice. This just does not, capture why one would give up engaging with society voluntarily. Um, so my next question is: what is the relationship between the sannyasi and the world? Does he care about us? Some evidence from the Upanishads show that he does care about us. When a man is not evilly disposed in thought, word or deed towards any living being, then he is a true sannyasi. He's friendly towards all beings. Compassion alone is his pastime. So he does care about us. He's detached, yes, but he doesn't hate us. It's not a spiteful thing that he's doing here. So he who is free from reviling others is a man who is liberated while alive, Jivan Mukta. He purifies others. He performs customary acts such as bathing, not because it is necessary for him, but because he wants to respect the wishes of the others. So sometimes wearing clothes is also, for instance, Akka Mahadevi is supposed to have said that I don't wear clothes because I'm ashamed, but I'm wearing it so as to not embarrass others. So this sense of caring for society, for grihasthas, and so on. So he does not make the sannyasi does not make any distinction between right and wrong, or between receiving and not receiving. There is this sense as well. So when this is talked about, the sannyasi appears to be amoral a little bit, but that's really his discipline. In this case, it's not so much how he's relating to others around him, I think. So we must keep both these things in mind. In case he doesn't care, that's because it's his discipline. But if he does care, then how beautiful that he does. So I think the onus is upon us to understand what he might be doing when. And the very famous quote from Mahopanishad, that the whole world is a family, is actually what a sannyasi is telling the grihastha. It's the sannyasi who believes that the whole world is his family, not just one, two, three, four, or five. And he's not selfish in that way, so as to think that just these members are his family. So the very sannyasi interpretation of the word mamata is very interesting here. Mamata, minus. Now, in the Grihastha interpretation of this word, mamata means compassion or motherly love, whereas the same word, when looked at from the sannyasi perspective, shows to us a very different perspective, and that's the idea that I include everybody. I view everybody as my family, not just a few handful of members, and then behave selfishly about them. So it's an expansive, all-inclusive notion of the self, a view that does not feed one's senses or proceeds from it, and completely lacks personal agendas. So hence, I would say that the sannyasi life is not life negating, but sits very well with life affirming traditions. And both the grihastha and the sannyasi are part of the ashrama system. I mean, it makes total sense that they're both part of the system, because I see detachment, but not a disengagement, as it were, in the sannyasi. So is the sannyasi ethical? Now, this is an important question for me, because I want to examine Hindu texts from the perspective of ethics. And so this is a question I carry to every text I read. So when I see that ahimsa is emphasized, truthfulness, forsaking desires, and sannyasi wishes for the prosperity of all in several verses across the Upanishads. When I see this, I kind of understand what is going on here, because the sannyasi is taking responsibility for everyone, not just one family. And he's selfless. He burns away his desire, jealousy, envy, egotism. He gives up slander, pride, and all the negative emotions, views his own body as a corpse. Mm, he becomes selfless. Again, the whole emphasis on non-injury, true speech, non-stealing, and all of these virtues make him ethical. So sannyasa is about fulfilling a higher call that is not petty morality. So even when he appears amoral, I want to suggest that it's not because he is amoral really, but because, like I said, he's focusing on his own discipline, and it's not petty morality that he cares for. So, which is why the Paramahamsa has no rules, and the Avadhuta behaves like a madman. And I'm finishing, Nagaraj sir. And so one of my last set of questions: what is the sannyasi's relationship with the Veda? So again, the Sanyasa Upanishads have varied views. In some, he has to give up Vedas and ritual activity in heavenly words, because the Vedas have karma kanda, the rituals, and these rituals are aimed to go to heaven. Whereas what the sannyasi is truly aiming for is moksha, and heaven is not that. So this distinction is the reason why his relationship with rituals and with Veda is kind of complicated. Nevertheless, many Sanyasa Upanishads mention the Vedas with reverence, and the rules for this sannyasi-hood is given in the Vedas. So there's no moving away from Veda. Only a very bad reader could mess up this equation here. So the sannyasa and grihastha polemics, I just want to dwell on this for one moment because I'm running out of time. I think that we cannot lose sight of the ethics and values that underlie the sannyasa or the grihastha setup, because both are equally valuable, and get carried away by this polemic. So each varna had pride in its own duties and activities and so on. Therefore, there was some, sparks flying every now and then. So the polemics was there, but each was aware of the duties of the other and the contributions of the other, and revered the other. The grihasthas sustained the sannyasis, obviously, and so I also wanted to point out here that the grihasthas were aware of vairagya in the form of smashana vairagya or prasava vairagya. We had glimpses of these, so we could understand this different notion of selfhood that underlied all of the different varnas and the ashrama system. As such. So quick spiritual progress was the concern here, and not social power. So only during bhakti, I think, resources became an issue. And when Basava gave us the formula Kayakave Kailasa, there he was extending the duties of the sannyasi to say that we will live within society and will also contribute to society. So in this way, when dharma is threatened, sannyasis change the rules of their game, and sometimes they even take up arms to protect the society. So this is how I think we have the Nath yogis, the Naga sadhus, the akhadas, and so on. A much misunderstood topic within scholarship. I don't want to go into that much. And I was especially puzzled by Oliville trying to retain the term suicide for a sannyasi giving up his body. This was really very, very Orientalist, I thought, because instead of acknowledging that the term does not capture the sannyasi, he forces it upon the category of the sannyasi. I think that the decolonized understanding would not allow for terms such as suicide to be used, and a sannyasi must not be subsumed under the category of suicidal people. But these are the conversations we still need to have. Now, when it comes to caste, in some of the Upanishads, the eligibility is there. Anyone can take up sannyasa, but in some of the Upanishads, the assumption is that it is the Brahmin who is taking it up. Uh, but when the eligibility is opened up, the conduct is not. So this is what I wanted to say. So you may belong to any varna, take up sannyasa, but once you take up sannyasa, the rules are the same. So just because you're a Brahmana sannyasi, the rules are not different for you. Everybody has the same niyamas to follow. So the conduct, therefore, is the same. So sannyasis typically don't take, in some cases, in some texts, don't interact with Shudras, don't interact with outcasts and so on. And those rules of conduct remain. So even though you yourself might have been a Shudra who took a sannyasi, you cannot then later interact with just anybody. You cannot interact with women, you cannot interact with Shudras. These rules remain. So there is a great emphasis on wiping away the stigma of a bad Brahmin or a vile Brahmin, and so on. So this is how the Varna system is talked about. The Brahmin is both revered, but the vile Brahmin is also put down from time to time, and the sannyasis as to not be like the vile Brahmin. So this is how these texts are speaking about the different varnas. So again, conduct, not birth. This is also something that I'm seeing in the Sanyasa Upanishads. He cannot, behave just how he wants. There are specific roles. So the birth is not important, but the conduct after taking up sannyasa is important. And he cannot take food from a bad Brahmin. That's the point that I wanted to emphasize under conduct, not birth. So he cannot take food from a bad Brahmin. Um, so yeah, so those who are effeminate outcasts, eunuchs, blind, deaf, childish, dumb. These are denied the eligibility for taking up sannyas. And I kind of understand this. I think the reason is because the body needs to be intact, because you have to reside in your body in order to contemplate. You have to be able to be fit, or have a healthy, a normal body, so to speak, without which you cannot sit in meditation and so on. Um, so, so there are many similes. So he must avoid salt as he would a person of a lower caste, and so on. So again, this was interesting. So the conduct rules, they don't change, but entry is available to everyone. So this question Nagar sir already kind of invoked: is the sannyasa tradition misogynist? Now there are several mentions of women, of mothers, of daughters-in-law, and so on in the Upanishads, but there are several negative mentions as well, because the woman's private parts are compared to festering ulcers and so on. And this is the kind of thing that Margaret was also talking about. The beauty of women is after all flesh, furnished with tendons and bones and joints. So this kind of there is a series of such verses in the Yajnavalkya Upanishad. Um, how must we view them? And there is a rejection of the wife as well, but not just the wife, all filial bonds. So there is a long list of verses that criticize the son as well. So if it was only the woman's body that was being, criticized in this way or viewed in this way, then we could have a problem with it. But every sensory object, every object of the sense is criticized. The wife, women, the sun is criticized, gold, land, every object that could, become an object of, sensory pleasure gets criticized equally. Um, so, um, so a long list of verses that a sun is also misery. So this is my point, that there is disgust over all relationships and mockery of all sense objects. So we cannot view this as misogynist. This is simply sannyasa doing its thing. So we see this in Bhartrhari's Vairagya Shataka, in Purandaradasa's Padas, in Akkamahadevi's Vachanas even. In Akkamahadevi's Vachanas, something wonderful is happening. She herself, although she herself is a woman, says Hennu, Honnu, Mannu. And this is a common set of themes in the Vachanas, in all the Vachanas, 20,000 Vachanas of all the different Vachanakaras. Hennu, Honnu, Mannu means a woman, land, and gold. So being a woman herself, she's speaking like this, and that's because she's genderless herself at this point in time, and she has taken on this language, this vocabulary of speaking about women, gold, and land in this way that she doesn't even realize that she's speaking about this. And this is so problematic for feminists who want to read her as a feminist. Unless you're very careful and have understood what she's trying to do here, you can't even reclaim her as a feminist, really. But there are some interesting vachanas that clarify what's going on here. And I want to just spend one last minute on that. There is this one particular vachana by Allama Prabhu, wherein he says, they say gold is Maya, gold is not. They say woman is Maya, woman is not. They say land is Maya, land is not. To the mind, desire is Maya. So there are several verses, similar verses are also there in the Sanyasa Upanishads, which say that samsara is in the mind. And similarly, several other Vachanakaras invoke the same kind of themes. So we must not take the male gaze of the Sanskrit kavyas very seriously. We must know that the authors are male, and just like Nagaraj sir said, we must not take them too seriously after a point, because if women had written, then our perspective too would have come out. So there are female sannyasinis, and I would like to say that widows are our sannyasinis, that they behave pretty much like sannyasinis, and Finally, I want to say that Dumo's category of the sannyasi as individualistic is inadequate. I spoke about this in an earlier conference, so I won't go quite deeply into this. When it comes to caste, eligibility is open, but conduct has rules. And the awareness of bad ascetics or imposter ascetics makes this tradition a very critical and aware, very intelligent tradition, and we must pay attention to this. And the questions we think that we are asking from the perspective of modernity are actually questions that the text themselves are posing. The skepticism that we bring today and we think is modern is actually already present in the text, and the texts are self-critical, and they are telling us how to think about these institutions, and not given to a skeptic's perspective, and so on. And I think that the asking permission from parents acts as a check and balance against the fake sannyasis, because parents know you, your family knows you very well, and those who are insincere in their in their intentions can be quickly called out by their own families. So and finally, I wanted to say that the Paramahamsa, the already enlightened sannyasi, can behave however he wants. In some verses, the idea is that he can stay back and enjoy life as well, and that doesn't stick to him because he knows that those desires are not his compulsions, and so on. And this is where it can get very tricky for women. So when the Nityananda saga happened, and when Aarti Rao came out and gave her interview, I felt very heartbroken for her, and I was immediately reminded of Arjuna's conversation with Urvashi when he was in heaven. So Urvashi invites him to have a rendezvous, and Arjuna says, "You are free. Your sexual ethics are different, but mine are not. I still have to go back to earth. My brothers are waiting for me, and I am bound, by rules that tell me, not to have this rendezvous with you." Eventually, Urvashi curses him, but then Indra shields Arjuna, and so on. So I think here is where we must understand that some of us who are Paramahamsas might have different sexual ethics, but really, who are the women who are getting caught up in all this, and how can they learn to say no? So this is where I'd like to end. Thank you, Nagaraj sir. Stop sharing.
Thank you, Sushumna ji. Actually, as always, you brought a lot of density, and probably to cover that rich, dense, and wide material, you were hastening a little. And there was a comment in the question and answer box by Ashok Gursurkar ji that it was a very good talk, but it was very fast. Uh, and I promised to our own Ashok Gursurkar ji that I will share the videos. We will very soon upload all these videos to the Indica Academy YouTube channel. So you'll be able to again go through these videos slowly at your own pace. You can again come back and back. She has been using so many slides, and the name of the text is also given at the end of every line. And if you can stop the video while watching it and look at the text, make a notes, and go back to collect the text, you'll be able to actually go to the actual line in the text and so on. That will be that is a student type exercise. You have to do a student type exercise. I wish Sushumna ji was a bit slower also. But even if she is slower, when so many texts are quoted, uh, definitely it's not easy to remember everything. So it is better to go to the video only. And those who have been asking for the PDFs and the slides also, I would tell you that the when you watch the video, slides are already there. Slides are being scrolled in the video. So there is no need to separately circulate the slides, is my opinion. But if you still think, we will ask the speakers to circulate the deck also among the viewers. And there are some questions. One very interesting question is Aditi ji is asking how to understand petty morality. One that is marked by judgment and superior inferior perspective, but that wouldn't be morality itself, right? Or am I missing something?
Mm, I would say missing the bigger picture for the for instance, I won't lie. But if someone's life is at stake, would you lie? So petty morality would be I won't lie ever, and sticking to that. But if someone's life is at stake, then making the choice to save that person's life by telling a lie. So that's the kind of thing that has in front.
Lalita ji is asking if interaction with women or some others is not allowed, where is the test of non-attachment or universal benevolence?
Mm, well, Gandhi tested himself, but I don't think our sannyasis would approve of that. So there is no need to test it in that way. They are isolated, they are wandering, the sannyasis. So that itself shows that there is no attachment with women. But today, modern sannyasis do interact with women, isn't it? And we could say that that's a test of their non-attachment. Universal benevolence. Why is that? Universal benevolence is something that is attached to their lifestyle, their conduct. There is no external act of benevolence in the sense that you can't see that. That's why I was telling you that you might not see kindness pouring out of a sannyasi. That's not how it's working. The very fact of taking sannyasa, of doing their particular kind of sadhana, that itself is purifying the sannyasi himself and the others. So this is how universal benevolence is working, not directly. Um, you know.
And there is an anonymous attendee question. Will all the parents of all the sannyasis get moksha? Are there no different levels of the sannyasa? To the anonymous attendee, and there is another question, comparison with devatas. Also, to all these questions, I would answer that as there is a method in our shastras, we use the word arthavada. So most of these are arthavadas. It doesn't actually, they have no literal meaning. It only means motivating some person to do something good, saying that it's a good act. That doesn't actually really mean exactly the same. That devatas are really jealous about sannyasa. Or actually, all parents of a sannyasi really get a moksha and all that. It doesn't actually mean that. These are all arthavadas, motivating statements. Uh, we should not be taken literally. Okay. Let us thank you very much, Dr. Kannan.